hold on for one moment. Our
Sure.
White House correspondent, Jim Acosta, is getting some major breaking news. The president apparently, Jim, has just given an interview to the Associated Press?
That's right, Wolf. This just happened earlier this afternoon, and we're just getting details of this in the last few minutes. The president is apparently criticizing, according to the Associated Press, the global condemnation that Saudi Arabia has received over the apparent killing of Jamal Khashoggi. The president saying here in an interview with the Associated Press, quote, if we have this, we can put it up on screen. "Here we go again with you're guilty until proven innocent." The president making a reference here, according to the Associated Press. We have not seen the full transcript of this interview. The president making a reference to the allegations that were facing his Supreme Court nominee and now the Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who the president felt was presumed guilty until there was that FBI expanded background check that some Republicans felt was not enough corroborating evidence to keep him from being on the Supreme Court. But the president talking about this case of Jamal Khashoggi with the Associated Press and saying to the Associated Press, here we go again with you're guilty until proven innocent. Wolf, it sounds as though, and we can only extrapolate this from the few strands that we have from this interview so far, that the president is once again taking the denials, accepting the denials from the Saudi government that they did not have any direct ties to the murder of the Saudi journalist, when, of course, Wolf, there is mounting evidence that says otherwise.
There certainly is. I know you're getting more information on what the president told the AP, so stand by. Congressman Garamendi, let me get your immediate reaction. You just heard the president tell the AP, he's upset because you're guilty, according to him, until you're proven innocent. He's defending the Saudis.
Well, he may want to talk to Turkey. He may want to be listening to what Erdogan said. He may want to be listening to the facts that are coming out in Ankara as well as in Istanbul. This took place on Saudi turf in Istanbul, in their consulate, in their offices. There is nobody, except perhaps the president, that's saying, A, it didn't happen, and B, that Saudi Arabia had nothing to do with it. In fact, Saudi Arabia had everything to do with this murder, and quite possibly the gruesome hacking up of the body. So what is the president doing? Is he standing up for the free press? Is he standing up for the First Amendment to our Constitution about the right of the press? Apparently not. He said it many, many times that the press is the enemy of the people. And here he is once again, instead of standing strongly in support of a journalist that was murdered by a foreign country, he is instead going the opposite direction. And that is a horrible signal. It is a horrible signal to every journalist anywhere in the world that as far as this president is concerned, the press is the enemy of the people. Apparently, Saudi Arabia believes that to be the case also.
What are the consequences if the Trump administration doesn't take some action?
Congress will. Congress will. We can withhold the approval and the arms sales that the president likes to talk about. And by the way, it's not $115 billion. There's about $14.5 billion that has actually been consummated. That is, the contract's actually in place. The money will eventually change hands as the equipment does. But the point here is really about the freedom of the press, about the role of the press, and about the American civil liberties and rights that we have for journalists to carry out their task. And our president, our country, has to stand firmly in support of journalists wherever they may be, whatever country they may be in. Otherwise, the truth will be hidden from the people. That's what the First Amendment's all about. And this president has declared war on the press, calling the press the enemy of the people, and in his rallies encouraging his supporters to take on the press, to condemn the press, and to otherwise harass the press that are trying to cover the president. This is terrible. Repercussions will come on. You had a moment ago about Duterte in Philippines. We can't allow that to happen. America has to stand firmly in support of the press, in support of the freedom of information. Our president is going the opposite direction, and the repercussions are inevitably going to be journalists dying even more than they have had in the past.
Abby Phillip, you cover the White House for us. Among other things, the president once again siding with the Saudi government. He said this: "Here we go again with with you're guilty until proven innocent. I don't like that. We just went through that with Justice Kavanaugh, and he was innocent all the way as far as I'm concerned. So we have to find out what happened. What do you make of this defense? He seems to be giving a lot of credence to the Saudi official denials.
Yeah, and Wolf, we knew this was coming. President Trump, every time he's been asked about this over the last several days, the first words out of his mouth are, the Saudis have denied it totally, over and over again. He's repeated this. And now I think you're hearing a little bit about why. And the reason is because he believes that this is another case of the media jumping to conclusions about something. The president also does not want this to get in the way of the relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia for a number of reasons, not just because of this arms deal that he seems very protective of, but also for his broader foreign policy goals. So this shouldn't be surprising in that respect. But I would say this is coming after the president has had multiple phone calls today with his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, who has been in Saudi Arabia. And I think it's clear that those phone calls haven't changed his mind about what he's seeing on the ground in Saudi Arabia and the impact that he thinks it'll have. A lot of people in his administration disagree.
It's also, Rich, borderline or ironic, maybe it actually is flat out ironic, that he's using kind of American ideals of justice and how you make sure that there is justice in this country by saying innocent until proven guilty. And one of the major criticisms of him, and frankly other presidents before him, is not pushing on the Saudis to be as focused enough on the moral imperative of freedom and all of the ideals, even basic freedoms that we have in this country. And that is the pressure on him right now. The pressure on him is to not just focus on the arms sales, not just focus on counterterrorism, which are incredibly important for the region and how everything fits in, but to be the moral leader when you have somebody who was going into a diplomatic consulate, who was working as a journalist, who was trying to do the basic things that when you look at human rights and freedoms that he is alluding to in the innocent until proven guilty line should be afforded.
You know, you're talking about a human being who was apparently chopped into pieces in a consulate here. And the president is not listening, it would seem to me, to Republicans in the Congress, Lindsey Graham in particular, who has been out there saying, I don't want to do business with the Saudis anymore if this is what is going on, comparing this to the Kavanaugh hearings. I mean, this is an apple and an orange we're talking about here. And he needs to act as a moral leader. You know, the people look to the United States for moral leadership. And instead of talking about we need to get to the bottom of this, et cetera, yes, Pompeo is over there. He's talking about, well, be careful. You don't want to convict the Saudis too quickly. Let's be nice to the Saudis.
And by the way, how would you feel if you were Justice Kavanaugh in this situation, being thrown in with this egregious, possibly crime by the Saudis? Not exactly a flattering comparison.
Exactly. There's another quote from the interview with the Associated Press. We're just getting in. He was asked to elaborate on his assertion in that tweet earlier today, calling Stormy Daniels horseface. And take a look and see what he says in this AP interview. He says, you can take it any way you want.
What way is there to take it? I don't even understand that, honestly.
That's not exactly a statement of remorse, though.
No.
The language that he used.
I mean, he's not backing down. And he's also, but this is also another case of the president not actually explaining himself, not even defending himself. He's just saying, just let it be whatever you think it is. He does not.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care. But guess who does care?
Yeah.
Every Republican on the ballot in 3 weeks in independent heavy districts where women are already turned off by what they're seeing in Washington, turned off by this president. And I'm talking to Republicans who very much like the president, seeing that tweet today about the horseface, sighing and saying that doesn't help.
Well, you know, the Republican Party has worked for so long to try and close a gender gap. And they've had a little bit of success sometimes, but they've got a real problem right now with women. Not the Republican base. We're not talking about that. But in those moderate districts you're talking about, this does not help. Even if you don't think, Stormy Daniels is a particularly great figure. Calling any woman that name. I mean, he's got a long history, as you've reported on your show today, starting with Carly Fiorina during the campaign and on and on and on and on, of calling women names.
But this is who the president is, and I think we shouldn't take it for granted that this is one of, so many interviews he's done over the last few days. The White House is not putting Donald Trump in a box 3 weeks before the midterm elections. They are literally letting him out of the box. And this is the person that Republicans are running with this fall. Warts and all, whether they like it or not, this is President Trump. And I think Republicans, by and large, have accepted that.